For many families, the most stressful moment in private school admissions isn't the interview. It isn't the application deadline. It's the moment the ISEE or SSAT score report appears in their inbox. Because the instant parents open that report and see the percentiles, one question tends to appear almost immediately. Is this score good enough for private school? From there, the anxiety can escalate quickly. Parents begin wondering whether that number has already determined their child's chances of admission. Did this percentile just determine my chances of getting into private school? Does this mean we should register for another test date? Did we just fall behind other applicants? And for many families, that moment can feel surprisingly overwhelming. And part of the reason it feels so stressful is the score report itself can be difficult to interpret if you haven't spent time inside the admissions process before. Most parents have never seen a testing report that looks like this. Instead of a single score, the document includes multiple percentiles. There are different testing sections. There's a writing sample that isn't actually assigned a numerical score. And suddenly, families are trying to interpret what all of these numbers mean without having much context for how admissions committees actually evaluate testing. So naturally, many parents begin assuming that the percentile itself must be the deciding factor. It feels logical to think that way. After all, percentiles seem very precise. A number like the 78th percentile or the 84th percentile feels like it should clearly tell us whether a student is competitive or not. But private school admissions committees rarely evaluate testing that way. And that's the part of the process that often surprises families the most. When admissions teams review applications, they almost never look at testing a single isolated number. Instead, they evaluate the testing results within the broader academic profile of the student. They compare the testing results with students' transcript and classroom performance. They read the teacher recommendations to understand how the student functions in an academic environment. They consider the difficulty of the student's current school curriculum. And they evaluate the student relative to the pool of applicants applying in that particular admission cycle. While the percentile on the score report may feel incredibly important to a parent, admissions committees are typically interpreting that number within a much larger context. And that context matters quite a bit. In fact, two students can have very similar testing scores and still experience very different admissions outcomes. One student might have a strong transcript and teacher recommendations that reinforce the testing results. Another student might have a more uneven academic profile that raises additional questions for the admissions team. The number itself doesn't tell the whole story. It's simply one piece of information that admissions committees use when forming a broader understanding of the student. This is also why many families feel confused when they start comparing scores with other parents. One student might receive an admissions offer with a testing percentile that another family assumed would be too low. Another student might have a very strong testing session, but still receive a waitlist decision. From the outside, the process can appear inconsistent. But when you look at admissions decisions through the lens of the entire student profile, those outcomes begin to make much more sense. Admissions committees are not simply trying to admit the students with the highest testing scores. They are trying to build a class of students who will thrive academically, contribute to the community, and succeed within the academic environment of the school. Testing is part of that evaluation, but it's rarely the only factor guiding the decision. And once families begin understanding how testing fits into the larger admissions process, the score report itself often becomes easier to interpret. Because instead of feeling like a final judgment, it becomes one piece of a much larger admissions picture. And understanding that bigger picture is what ultimately helps families make thoughtful, strategic decisions as they move through the admissions journey.